Hi, welcome to Filmaginations, a podcast about your favorite TV series and films. Every few weeks, I will cover a different one and take a deep dive into what happens on the screen and what my favorite moments are.
We're gonna talk about fellow travelers. Hopefully, watch the show. I discovered that this show existed way too late, to be honest. It is based on a novel of the same name from 2007, written by Thomas Mallon. I would recommend for anyone listening to read the book, although be ready because the story on the screen is not the exact copy of the written version. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything more, but buy it and you'll see for yourself. To summarize Fellow Travelers, it is a love story between two men who meet during very difficult times when same-sex couples have to hide their romantic interests. We follow their lives throughout the 1950s, 60s, 70s and 80s, all filled with different obstacles. We have Hawkins Fuller, often called Hawk, played by Matt Bomer, a handsome, charismatic and controlling character, and Tim Laughlin, played by Jonathan Bailey, a religious, idealistic and innocent man. They are both very different, and perhaps that's why the story is so interesting. Matt and Jonathan have an amazing chemistry that can be seen on screen, especially during the very intimate scenes, which, as I'm going to point out later, were very important to the story. I'm really glad that we got to see so many vulnerable and detailed sex scenes. I think opening a door into the bedroom, so to speak, gave us an intimate connection with them and also showed us how the characters are feeling at the moment, leaving us even more emotionally invested in the story. I think Tim and Hawk's story is so interesting because they have different views on the world and many times the differences clash together. And we get to see how they react, trying to hold on to each other, but also survive in these difficult times. Hawk has a double life, and as Jess Cagle, an interviewer, said, he feels comfortable with that. There is not much shame in him, yet he is very troubled deep down. However, as Ron Niswainer, a screenwriter of the show, suggested, he is not living a complete lie. He loves his wife and his kids. We can see him caring for them, playing with them. He just chooses to compartmentalize. On the other hand, we have Tim, who is young, naive and idealistic, as I said before. He wants to believe in things, feel things, and have an open and honest life with Hawk, which tells us he is braver than Hawk in many ways. However, Hawk has more to lose. He is well known, he has money and connections. He has a well-established life and wants to keep it that way. Since Hawk is usually more composed and in control, I find it beautiful when he allows himself to be vulnerable with Tim. At the same time, we constantly see Hawk using Tim. We see him going back and forth, trying to decide if Tim's worth the risk, if maybe one night stands are better. I think feeling sympathetic towards Hawk's character is difficult at times, but as Jess Cagle said, Matt, with his incredible acting, makes us really feel for him. He shows us that Hawk does have painful experiences behind him and they really shape his approach to love. As Matt points out, he has been traumatized by his father, by the war, and he creates a life where he can succeed and have everything he wants, but under certain conditions. The incident with his first love, Kenny, and his father finding out about them created this fear inside him that the cost of loving him would be someone's life. Due to that, later on, he decides to compartmentalize. He chooses to marry Lucy, both to have a so-called normal life, but also to cement his relationship with Senator Smith, who is like a father to him, which is understandable with his own father disowning him. Moving on to Tim, I like how open and daring Tim is with his love and affection. He is a bit idealistic with that and he doesn't understand how Hawk can have this double life. To him it should be a choice between one or the other, hiding or living in the open and being yourself. It is quite sad to see Hawkins hurting him and disappearing from his life and coming back when it's convenient for him. However, it's undeniable that Hawk is a crucial piece in Tim's history. If we look at Tim's character, we can see that, as Jonathan mentioned, Tim has a chemical awakening when meeting Hawk and getting intimate with him, not only by having sex, but also by having deep conversations. Ultimately, Skippy has his sexual release with Hawk. Using Jonathan's words again, Tim and Hawk are two souls that come together. They communicate a lot through eye contact, trying to see what they can or cannot do, what pleases the other person, and this is a huge part of intimacy itself. Matt also commented on the intimacy scenes and sex scenes. He said they were an integral part of the story. It wasn't just a formality. The characters were never the same after the scenes as they were before, so these scenes really moved the story along. Characters' interactions physically often reflect what's happening inside them emotionally. Lucy's character is also an important part of the story. Ron Niswainer mentioned before, she has interesting insights about her. He says Lucy was not supposed to be a 1950s stereotype, a woman who just wants to be a wife and a mother. In fact, we can see her questioning motherhood. However, she's also in love with Hawk and wants to be with him, but also, as it is established later, she will never have him just for herself. She's always sharing Hawk with Tim. It's never just her and her husband. In one of the scenes, Tim says, "It's not a contest." And Lucy replies, "Of course it is. It always has been." Lucy knows that she has no power in her relationship, and there is a conflict inside her, which is well portrayed by Alison. On one hand, she prefers to turn a blind eye to her husband's desires, which is being with other men. She knows there is a part of him she will never understand, but wants to be with him as long as he makes their family a priority. As Ron said, she's making a deal, in a way, to have the man she wants in her life. On the other hand, she wants to gain control over her marriage and challenges Hawk and even Tim to show them she's not to be fooled with. She can be seen flirting with a neighbor while dancing with Hawk. She's clearly pressing the boundaries, doing to Hawk what he often does to her. Alison commented on the scene where Lucy confronts Tim and reveals she burned Hawk's letter. The actress thinks it was the only way for Lucy to get power in her relationship with Hawk. She stayed neutral and composed to be able to deliver that information, the information she thought she would take to her grave. Alison believes she wouldn't have been able to say that if she allowed emotions to step in. Lucy is showing a bit of Hawk's ruthlessness in that moment. There are a few other scenes worth mentioning where we see Lucy's conflicted character. She talks to Hawk about a gay man she met traveling. Seems like she's trying to push Hawk to tell her the truth, or maybe she's hoping he'll say nothing and confirm he's not who she feared he is. Later on in life, when her fears have been confirmed, she tells Hawk, "At least show me enough respect to keep whatever this is out of our home." She shows her strength here and also verbally acknowledges Hawk's cravings. There's a very powerful scene when she talks to Hawk after visiting Tim in the hospital, after seeing Hawk's belongings there. She finally speaks up on how she feels about sharing her husband with him. She says out loud, "And when he dies, God forgive me, we can finally have our lives together, free of him. It will be over, but now I know it will never be over." She has never been desired. She's been lonely all those years she spent with Hawk. Finally, she's doing something for herself, standing up for herself. Now I would like to get more specific and talk about the things I love the most about the show. It wasn't easy to narrow down, I'm gonna be honest. Feel free to tell me what were your favorite scenes. Maybe you agree with me, maybe not. Either way, please share. First on the list is a scene where Hawk visits Tim in his apartment for the first time. How Tim is denying Hawk only to give in a moment later. My heart was pounding when Hawk stood up in front of Tim, asked, "Is this okay?" And Tim answered, "Yes," like he was longing for it, yet couldn't believe it was happening. It was really hot how Hawk grabbed Tim's shirt to bring him up from the bed and started undressing him. This whole scene is dripping with desire. And I like how Hawk brings a radio next time because Tim was so loud before. During the first intimate scene, we also hear Hawk calling Tim Skippy for the first time, nickname that stole my heart. My next favorite is Tim singing in a restaurant. I just love how Jonathan had to sing off key, even though he's an amazing singer. I don't know if you knew that, but he is. We also get to see Tim voicing the problem the relationship has. There's always a perhaps, and he never got to hear Hawk saying "I love you," which is something you would expect after seeing someone for so long. One person commented on Hawk's reaction, and I couldn't agree more. They said Hawk is entertained and flattered and disgusted and embarrassed all at once. I'll leave you with that. As a next all-time favorite, I had to nominate Naked Dancing after a very important change of dynamics when Tim is the dominant one. Matt said this is as intimate as it gets. They are naked, face to face, emotionally and physically connected. We can feel how comfortable they are with each other, and that's very touching. I like how we get to see characters kings throughout the show. Hawk likes his feet to be played with, and Tim likes his nipples to be touched. My favorite scenes portraying that are the famous food scene and the one unfolding after Hawk receives a tie from Tim. Whole food scene is just iconic because we get to see Tim flirting and having power over Hawk. He realizes in that moment that Hawk desires him, and that's what changes the dynamic. The tie scene gives us Hawk being sweet to Tim and focusing on pleasuring him, which comes as a surprise to Tim himself. I'd like to also point out that the presents they gave each other was so wholesome, especially the cufflinks that Hawk gives Tim. It was incredibly thoughtful. Later on, we see Hawk saying goodbye to Tim, kissing him, breathing in his smell, rubbing the noses together. In that moment, he is thinking about the polygraph, that if he fails, he won't see Tim again. Moving on to later times, I am glad we witnessed Tim comforting and talking with Hawk's son, Jackson, them having a screen time together in general. I think it adds meaning to a scene in the 70s when Tim comforts Hawk after Jackson's death. That's also when we see Hawk being very vulnerable, crying hysterically over his son. I would also like to praise the scenes where Hawk takes care of sick Tim, especially when he holds him in his hospital bed. I love Matt's acting when Hawk sees Tim having a seizure. You can tell how terrifying that was for him. We also see Hawk's feelings unfolding in private when he realizes Tim is going to die very soon. Lastly, I will point out the ending. Matt said the ending was a culmination of many things for Hawk. He realizes that his love is gone, and at the same time he is starting to understand who he actually is. He admits, to his daughter nonetheless, that Tim was the man he loved. He even lets the tears fall. Since I could talk about each scene for hours and hours, but I want to keep this podcast short and sweet, I will give you a few quotes that also represent important moments of the show, in my opinion, of course. And again, remember, you can always comment, let me know, write an email, thank you. Number 1. I'd like to come up to your room. I want to hold you tonight, if you let me. 2. There is someone now. 3. Where have you been? Doesn't matter. I'm home now. 4. You know, you've been rather sweet lately. 5. Don't laugh. Promise. He's a poet. 6. You bring men here? You'd be the first. 7. A girl can hope, can't she? 8. I have loved you my whole life. I've never loved anyone but you. You were my great, consuming love. That's it for the quotes. I hope you knew immediately what scenes they referred to. There's one more topic I want to cover before I move on to the next section of this podcast, and that is heartbreak. The show in itself is saddening at times, but I chose 2 scenes that are most heartbreaking to me. Number 1 is Hawk announcing to Tim he's going to marry Lucy. This whole exchange is especially painful because it starts with Tim talking about quitting his job, not knowing what to believe, clearly being on edge. All he knows is that he needs Hawk, but he doesn't even comfort him. He jumps straight into delivering the news. The expressions on their faces say it all, both with tears in their eyes. Hawk feels guilty, shameful, but also defeated that he had to sacrifice their relationship just to survive. Tim is looking at Hawk, challenging him in a way to take it back and tell him it's not true. His whole body shows how much it hurts him, how unbelievable it is Hawk is abandoning him after everything. We see so many emotions in that scene, even though so little words are said, and the music adds into it, of course. As the second most heartbreaking scene, I chose the one where Tim sees Hawk's baby in the hospital. Jonathan said this was a moment of awakening for Tim. He sees the innocence of the baby, of a new life, the commitment that Hawk has made to his wife, and Tim understands he has no place in his life anymore. Hawk has done something that Tim will not be able to move on from. Thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did and had fun remembering what happened following this episode. I will be back next week with a movie this time, My Policeman.